Thank you very much, Jarrett. Tons there in terms of food for thought, so hold those thought patterns. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the panellists for this evening, and as I introduce you, please make your way up to the stage. Jessica Rose from the Albert Eden Local Board is a board member and representative for Women in Urbanism Auckland. Daniel Newcombe, Manager, Strategic Projects, Central, North and West Auckland Transport. Pity I didn't bring my drum because I need a drum roll for this next gentleman. Ludo Campbell-Reid, Design Champion and General Manager, Auckland Design Office, Auckland Council. I'm seeing some fantastic questions coming through on Slido, so please keep those coming. Jessica, do you think women use public transport differently to men? If so, in what way could this impact transport planning as freedom planning?
Just talking to it. Can everyone else hear me? Can you hear me? Eddie, I'm so glad you asked me that question. I guess, though, while I've been sitting down watching this, is I kind of wondered if it could be posed to any of the other panellists. I know the answer, but does everybody else? Yes, women do use public transport differently, and they use it for a multiple of reasons. Some of it can be because women are more likely to feel harassed in public transport, and I guess when we think about freedom, it can sometimes be freedom to do things, but it can be freedom from things as well. Also, women are more likely to take multiple stops when making a public transport movement, and I noticed when you said Jane earlier, Jarrett, who clearly wants to get married, but Jane, 45 minutes, is that 45 minutes point to point, or is that if she wants to go from work to home and then to the club, and does she want to stop at the pharmacy to pick something up on the way? So, and women are more likely to be caregivers also, so they will often maybe have to drop kids off on the way to kids off at school on the way to work, or go and pick up groceries during the day. And women are more likely to outlive men, which is another societal concern on its own, but it means we've got a lot of women who may be at a point in their lives where public transport is their only way of moving around, and it may be difficult for them to access. So yes, women potentially do use transport differently than men, and it does affect the freedom. Daniel,
which transport projects are going to have the greatest effect on the city in the future?
On behalf of Auckland Transport, I should probably say our projects will. I should say the light rail and the city rail link projects in particular are going to move a lot more people, and it's not just because they're rail projects. But I was actually thinking on the way here, and we were talking about this before, I think things like Lime scooters are going to have the biggest impact going forward. Lime scooters, and not them in particular, but micro-transit little things that we haven't thought of yet that are coming, aren't well predicted in our models and our thinking and our planning. My strict observational data from looking out the window and watching people use them is that a lot of the trips are being made are induced trips. I know Jarrett said that induced trips can be a bad thing, and that's true with putting in a road and having cars in it. But I'm seeing a lot of the Lime scooter trips as being induced travel, that trips people wouldn't have otherwise made because they're smaller, shorter trips, and they would have said, oh, I don't have a bike with me, there's no bike parking, I don't have a helmet, and all of a sudden they've got the freedom to go and do that. So I see them as a fantastic new trend that will be filling the first leg, last leg of a public transport trip, or expanding the walkability of a part of the city. And it's a new kind of concept of a shared transit, space-efficient thing. I totally agree with Jarrett that it's about technology will save us, but not through automated cars. It'll be through little micro-transit things that we haven't even thought of yet, hoverboards and stuff like that, which will provide choices that we don't even know that we need at this point. So it makes it very hard for someone like me to try to plan the network. So I think we might just focus on the big tubes to move lots of people, and let some of the market provide the microtransit innovations, which are seeming to unlock cities in particular with space-efficient transport options.
Thank you. Ludo, as Auckland's design champion, what has Auckland done to integrate its new public transport network with people's onward journeys by foot and cycle? I.e., what are the good examples and where might we want to focus our attention next?
Can you hear that? Yeah, there we go. Can I just be cheeky and just mention something about what Jessica was talking about earlier? I think the whole concept of, I think cities would be far more livable if more women ran cities. There needs to be diversity at the decision-making tables. There needs to be decision-making diversity in all the aspects of what we're doing here. And I can't think about it, what it's like to be a woman, because I am not. And I don't. So the point is, you need more women making decisions on these things that matter, and more diversity, therefore. So when you think about engineering, we need more women engineers. We don't need more men engineers, because they're thinking about themselves. So I think there's a bigger concept here about diversity of thinking. So I think the question's really good, but I think it's really difficult. It's like asking me, what's it like to be disabled? I get asked, well, do you understand? And I say, well, no, I don't, because I'm not. And so you need people in your teams who do understand that. So it's perhaps a cheeky way to just encourage that conversation a bit further, and a really important one. So in terms of your question, I was thinking about this. There's a couple of key things, and bearing in mind what Jarrett's been talking about, and key things around PT. You've got to design the infrastructure first. London built its underground system when it had a population of 1 million. Think about London today without the underground system. So the forefathers of London decided, and mothers, decided to build the metro then, and they thought about the future. So you've got to do it first. You've got to locate it correctly. I was thinking about isolation, or PT isolation. Think about Palmerston North. I've been there a few times, and they used to have a railway line right in downtown, the middle of Palmy. They then moved it out to the outskirts of town, so it becomes really difficult to get to. So these are the challenges of how you deliver PT. And at some point in every single journey, you are a pedestrian. And I think the whole design of our PT networks, our transport planning, needs to put people at the centre. We should be psychologists, not planners. So I think, Britomart brilliant. It's fantastic. It's got a great street network. It's well integrated. I think New Lynn is a great example of a fantastic new PT node with a really good pedestrian environment. Newmarket could be, but it isn't. I think that could be done a lot better. And I was thinking about Albany. If you try to catch a bus in Albany, it's really difficult. So there's a bunch of areas where we need to change the way we do our street design, and I think that's the key for me. So, challenges going forward. I think southern growth areas are a real challenge. How we design a more walkable street network before we design the houses and before we design the employment. It's about getting the grain right. So, sorry for the long answer, but there's a lot to talk about.
Jarrett, have any thoughts to share on the 3 questions just asked, or would you like to move on?
Well, those are all great. Let me see what else you have.
How do we get more buy-in and support for public and active transit from the private sector, especially employers for employees?
Well, California is very good at this. If you have more than 200 employees, your employees' transportation is your problem. And so the way we interact with the private sector is really critical, because the private sector, through its location choices and its development choices, yes, they bring jobs, that's great, they give us things we want, they also create transport demand. And they can create it well or badly, and they can create problems for us, or they can create solutions for us. It is frequently the case that if an employer's goal is to get the cheapest possible land, the place to put that is way, way out beyond Albany somewhere, right? And then that's going to be a call center, And like 300 low-income people are going to have to find their way out there every morning, and that's going to be a problem. So that's a case where the profit of the company has been essentially dumped onto a problem for their own employees. So I think the key here is to put forward the idea that an employee's commute reality was created by the employer, and that the employer has a responsibility to be part of solving that reality, or maybe even making choices that don't even create it.
Some of these questions have common denominators or themes, so I'm going to ask you two at once, and any of the panelists feel free to address this. So the first one is, how do you define frequency? What is the threshold? The second one is, how do we address streets that have become severed by a wall of buses? What is the optimal number before we reach overcapacity, particularly in the city centre?
Those sound like they're directed at me. The optimal level of frequency is the experience of turn up and go. The experience that you wait a reasonable and short amount of time and a bus comes along. That actually varies depending on how far you are going. So you'll wait 2 hours for a flight to Sydney, but you'll wait a day for a flight to London. Our sense of how far we are willing to go is, of how long we're willing to wait is related to how far we're willing to go. Having said that, there's another thing that comes back to Daniel's comment, which is that as we start to see scooters in particular, in other words, what I see about scooters is it is going to be increasingly possible to move like a bicycle without necessarily the athletic effort of a cyclist. For those people who, for whatever reason, aren't in the position to do that. And that opportunity to move more people in a bicycle-shaped kind of thing is really important, because what that means is that we're moving in a direction where public transport does not have to do the 1 kilometer trip anymore. The 1, 2, 3K trip should probably be on a bicycle or scooter. And then public transport can specialize a little more. I mean, not that it won't still be there, it won't still be useful for it. Of course, you can ride 2Ks down Balmoral if you want, but it means we'll be able to put stops further apart, focus on slightly longer distances. For that reason, though, the rule of thumb, and the rule of thumb that AT has used, is 15 minutes. But in a local thing like CityLink, it would not be acceptable for CityLink to be every 15 minutes, because that's just too short a trip. It has to be more frequent than that. The wall of buses, I want Ludo's view on the wall of buses too. It's not a problem. I find that buses stop at signals and do other things that create ways through the wall. And so I am personally not as disturbed by the wall of buses as I am disturbed by the wall around my life. And I am willing to tolerate some buses being present so that human beings can have freedom and opportunity in their city. Having said that, if you want a real wall of buses problem, go back to what the CBD looked like before the new network, when something like 1,000 buses tried to enter the CBD in 15 minutes in the morning. I don't remember the exact figure, but the extraordinary inefficiency of network design is one of the ways you get too many buses providing not enough service. I think what you want are a lot of buses providing useful service, so that, and once lots of people are coming and going on those buses, and those buses are spilling forward pedestrians, you won't see them as a wall so much anymore.
I think one of the things that we've been talking about more recently is this, the concept of not planning a city for rush hour traffic. So what we tend to do is we tend to plan a lot of these things in the peak. We build car parks for Christmas shopping, so at supermarkets, so that everybody who wants to shop on a certain time, one day a year, you've got enough space. For the rest of the time, it's idle, redundant. So that's how I see Auckland for many, many years, for 40, 50 years. The streets are large, they're wide, they're empty of cars. But during a rush, so I think the key is really understanding how we can elongate that rush hour, so it's maybe not called rush hour anymore. Maybe we sort of, I don't know, there'll be someone smarter than I with a better word for it, but push that out a bit longer, you'll get less wall of buses, and I think it's a good thing, it's a good sign that it's working. So that'd be my comment.
Jessica, what do you find the most frustrating thing about transport in Auckland to be?
Oh, it's definitely It's definitely trying to get across town to somewhere. So, for example, it's really, really easy if I want to go directly from where I am to the centre of town. That's awesome. I can do that. In rush hour, I can do it very quickly. During the day, it takes me a bit more wait time. What I find the most frustrating is genuinely getting to my workplace at the moment. That's very hard to do. I can only do that really in a car-dependent way. If I want to go and visit someone in Papakura from where I live, that is also extremely frustrating. If I wanted to visit someone in Papakura and then go to town, I can still get to town from Papakura. That's excellent. So I think the most frustrating thing is trying to get across town to things, or again, I think it takes it back to, I mean, that's my personal experience, but I think in that way it could also be the multi-stop trips where you're going, I guess, not to the CBD is probably the most frustrating thing.
It used to be much worse.
You used to not be able to get to the CBD either.
Daniel and panelists. So I'm assuming it's for everybody, but you've got to answer first. How can we get bus lane users, cycling lane users, and private car users to cooperate with each other?
How long have we got? Well, I'm a cyclist. I came here on my bike. We came here on our bikes tonight. I ride down Dominion Road every morning in the bus lane. I'm comfortable with that, but I'm a nearly middle-aged male who's been. Thanks for the. And so I'm confident, and I'm happy overtaking a bus, having a bus squeeze past. Well, not happy. I'm familiar with a bus trying to squeeze past me, and I deal with it. And I actually did some research when I was at university into bus lanes. I found that the wider the bus lane is, the safer it is for a cyclist. I mean, go figure. There's more room for a bus to get past you. So I think there's that spatial element that Jarrett keeps talking about, but there's a behavioural politeness element about how we behave with each other, and that you see that on the streets every day when people are perfectly polite to your face, but you put them in a car, all of a sudden they just see red and they just want to yell at you and give you the fingers. I think we need to have a much greater acceptance of the shared need for safety and being able to get to your destination that we seem to lose as soon as we get behind the wheel of a car. And as a cyclist, I feel that acutely because when I have an incident with a car, I come off second best, whether it's my fault or not. So which is why I make my kids wear the helmets on their bikes. We saw a lady get hit by a car the other day on her bike, and it was terrible, but it was useful for me to use that as an example for my children to say, this is why I go on at you like a grumpy old parent. And I want them to be feeling the freedom to go out and cycle and walk all around our neighbourhood and into town, and not to be scared of these big buses as these horrible things which are terrorising the streets. So I think it's behaviour. I think the physical design of the street has a lot to do with it, and we need to do better about that. We will never live in a world where we have enough room, space to provide a separated thing for everybody and they can all do their own thing independently. That would be great, but we don't and shouldn't have that. So to me, that's why I think the emergence of spatially efficient vehicles and technologies is going to be a big help here, so that people can make choices and feel safe, feel comfortable, feel able to make all the trips that they want to make in their daily life without having to just say, oh, bugger it, I'll get in my car and drive.
I can have a go at this one as well. I think we need to turn the transport hierarchy pyramid upside down, which means we need to put people who are walking at the top of that, people who are bicycling next to that, people who are taking public transport by that, and so on and so forth, so the people who are flying get the least priority. But they already kind of do anyway at times. So, I think the key thing is we need the supporting legislation that goes with that too, and that needs to be built into our road code, so it is actually very rarely or almost never going to be the fault of the person who's walking if they're in some kind of accident involved with another vehicle. And it kind of goes on by layer of vulnerability rather than by layer of accident or human error. So therefore, people who are in a vehicle who are more likely to do more harm need to be holding a lot more responsibility at all times when they're behind a wheel.
Kia ora. How do other cities provide freedom for people who cannot walk far during any part of a journey? Similarly, what is the most effective tool for making a city easier to move about for young people and the elderly?
So we have this challenge in public transport planning, which is that most people will be willing to and will walk a good 400 meters to a useful public transport service because that is the way they maximize their freedom. They are being logical in doing that. And so we get the most freedom for the most people by designing a network where parallel routes are around 800 or 900 meters or a kilometer apart, not closer than that. Because that's how we build up frequency, and frequency is freedom. However, we then have public meetings, and we hear particularly from people who have difficulty walking. And we respect that, and we know that there are some, that's a mixture of, it's inevitably a mixture of, I just don't like you changing my bus route, I don't like having to walk further, and some people who actually can't walk further. Those are two different things. And that ultimately there needs to be a backstop for people who truly can't walk those distances. And that is, in America, we call it paratransit. There has to be some sort of underlying demand responsive service for those people, but there has to be a pretty good eligibility limit on it because most people can walk, and the way the system works best is for most people to walk, and walking is good for you if you can do it. So that's more or less how it's done. I think with young people, you know, it depends a lot on the parents' attitude toward their young people. I started changing buses in the rain when I was 10 years old. I was sent all the way across Portland to school and changed buses in the middle of downtown at a time when there was much more crime than there is now. I survived that. Obviously, I was male, which helped. But I think children tend to be much more resilient than their parents sometimes give them credit for. But I think that it is, of course, a parent's judgment what you're going to do. By and large, I think what we see with public transport is that there is an age, and it's sort of the parent's choice. For me, it was 10, when you say, okay, this person's capable of functioning as an adult on the public transport system and navigating it and doing everything that an adult would do, and there's no reason really to have any special accommodation there.
I knew this one would come up. 10,000 steps a day is a healthy amount to walk. However, if we flood the city with scooters, are we adding to the obesity epidemic?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So we've talked about walking to and from public transport. The Lime scooters can fill a void too. And the hoverboards will come at some point and they'll help. But a lot of what that actually, the underlying philosophy there is being active and not being in a large space and efficient vehicle. So walking around the corner to find the Lime scooter and then finding somewhere to drop it off or going and getting another one because the battery's flat, that all makes people walk. I think we've historically designed buildings and streets around the car park and the car access, and I think increasingly that was a foolish thing to do, and we'll be changing that. And we'll be looking for shorter connections that can be made on foot or on a small electric transit something, which will induce a lot more walking that people don't even know they're doing. So 10,000 steps is great, and it's a real pain to force yourself to do it, but the best kind of steps you can get is when you don't know you're doing it, and your active day delivers that to you. So when I catch a bus, I walk a lot of steps, a lot more than when I ride my bike, and I don't realize I'm doing it. I get home and I'm tired. So I think it's about the way you integrate those transport services into your lifestyle will just automatically, if you do it well, increase the activity of people, and I'd guess encourage them by sleek design to move around the city on foot a bit more than they otherwise would.
Could I challenge you on the hoverboard thing? Because I'm really concerned about some of the technology that's out there, and technology it's a master servant kind of conversation. Technology serves the city, not the other way around. it's a tool that enables you to move around, to move freely. It's not the be-all and end-all. I think if we're not careful, we will start walking a lot less. Human beings need to walk. We are an animal, as Jarrett talked about earlier, with some really basic needs. And those that obviously can't walk, I think autonomous vehicles and so forth is an incredible invention, and it will change their lives. So, I get that. But if we are thinking about the future of cities being more hoverboards, drones, I hope I don't see that, because we'll become just like every other city that thinks that transport is going to be solved by the technology. And I can think of nothing more horrendous than people flying around in these types of situations. Human beings need to walk. That's why we were here. That's why we're called human beings. And we need to keep walking to stay alive. My parents have a house with 3 staircases in the house. They're still alive because they walk around that house. People who are given a flat house, single story, who don't have to climb stairs, are unfit, more obese, and unhappier. And it's really interesting. Human beings need to keep moving as long as they can. So I'm just concerned about hoverboards and things. I hope I never see them.
Yeah, I think. So I've seen Back to the Future. I know what's coming. So, but I think with maybe the more relevant point is I agree with Ludo that technology won't save us, and the thing that I'm most scared of is when I'm talking to or finding out what people in Ministry of Transport and places like that are looking at, and they are looking at the way technology will make car trips more efficient, and autonomous vehicles and things like that, which I think is the wrong application of the technology. And I totally agree that would be a terrible outcome. So I guess I've been a real skeptic of technology will save us because that's the way I've seen it being applied. Just a new technology applied to old thinking. And I think what Lime scooters, to me, unlocks is people going, oh, I didn't realize we could do that. That's another way of me getting around in a more space-efficient way. And they start to do more trips on foot or partly on foot within a city centre at least, which is something that we are not prepared for, and that we should be, and we should think about more ways of enabling that to happen, and stop focusing on whether they've got a helmet or not. Just make the whole street safe for everybody would be good. Then we wouldn't have to worry about how fast they're going or whether they're on the footpath or not.
Sorry, I just also wanted to ask, who really thinks that a hoverboard's going to be easy to manage? Honestly.
So you've spoken about the need to be active and to move around and whatnot. Jared's book is entitled Human Transit, How Clearer Thinking About Public Transit Can Enrich Our Communities and Our Lives. Located underneath one of your seats is a signed copy of Jared's book. If you'd like to move now, you might find it under your seat. If there is a spare seat next to you, shuffle along and check that too.